if there's nothing else you can think of to say, let this be your prayer. Have your way in me. Today we're beginning the first of a 3-part series, Walking with the Masters, on spiritual practices. And the first one we're covering today is fasting, and I want you to know a couple of important things. First of all, this has nothing to do with Lent. It was already planned in my head to talk about these 3 things, and then Easter happened. Second of all, as I've been told by certain people already after the service that the sermon made them hungry. So I'm going to talk about fast, but we are having a breakfast after church, so I encourage you to begin your fast around 2 or 3 o'clock if you decide to do that. I wanted to talk about spiritual practices because we're living in amazing times. And I think you know that. We're living in a time on the planet when the vibration of the earth is changing, it's increasing, and the frequency is getting more and more intense. And we see changes faster, deeper, and more profoundly in the areas of economics. We see it socially happening. We see in governments and politics. And it's phenomenal what is happening on the planet. What that means for us individually is that it impacts us because we have to understand that due to the nature of the vibrational changes that are happening on the planet, everything we speak in this world is coming true much faster than we previously had known it to be. That all of the words that we say, everything we speak is coming back to us as reality much faster than it ever did before for our ancestors, where it may have taken thousands of years for us to get to this point. It's happening like that. And as spiritual people responsible for the creation of this planet, we have to be incredibly vigilant about the words we speak so that nothing we ever say that comes out of our mouth is not something that we want to come back to us personally. That's profound and deep, and it's a little scary. That's how powerful you are, because that's what's happening on the planet now. And to me, that says, how do we pay attention then to these practices? How do we get control of that? And that's what spiritual practices do. They lead us into a better understanding of how we are in the world, how we speak, what we do, how we love. The one I'm speaking about is fasting. Take a big breath. A lot of people think that it's like a totally Catholic thing that happens at Lent, but truly, and it does, but fasting is an ancient spiritual practice. It is found in religions throughout the world. In the Hebrew Bible, the great prophet Joel wrote, God's personal message, come back to me, and really mean it. Come fasting and weeping, sorry for your sins, which means sorry for the separation. I'm sorry, God, I don't want to be separated. Come fasting. This is an ancient Hebrew thing. In the New Testament, Jesus was trying to heal a young blind and deaf boy, and other people couldn't do it, but Jesus did. And when they said, how did you do that? Jesus said, this kind can come out by nothing but prayer and fasting. At one point later on in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus said, when you fast, blah, blah, blah. Well, he didn't say blah, 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 but he said, when you fast, and then he went on. But he didn't say, if you fast, or if you should think about fasting, or if your relatives fast and you happen to be there visiting. He said, when you fast. So it seems like it was like an expectation that this is one of the practices that we're going to do. Interesting. In Buddhism, it says, in Buddhism, fasting is an initial stage of self-discipline to acquire self-control. These are not religious fads, but practices based on a moral and psychological insight. This is from the Venerable Sri Dhammananda Mahathera, one of the greatest the Theravedic Buddhist teachers in the last century. Krishna said, now I love what Krishna said, because Krishna kind of puts it all into one big package. Everything you want to know about fasting. It cleanses the soul, raises the mind, subjects one flesh to the spirit, renders the heart contrite and humble, quenches the fires of lust, and kindles the true light of chastity. Enter again into yourself. Who knew that Krishna was an evangelist? But this is from the Bhagavad Gita. You read that, it's kind of exciting stuff. He just sort of says that, gosh, fasting is everything. In the Quran, the great prophet Muhammad said, a genuine fast cleanses the body, mind, and soul. It crucifies the flesh, and to that extent, it sets the soul free. Wow. cleanses the soul, frees us from lust, sets us free. And you're saying, why haven't you told us about this before? How come nobody talks about fasting? Except as a sacrifice for Lent. No. There are huge and fantastic benefits. I'm going to talk about them today too. The real question is, why should we fast? He's like, well, other than those things, those are historical religious reasons, but what reasons would we as a metaphysical, spiritual community have for fasting? And I would suggest to you that the greatest adversary we have in our hunger for God is not poison, it's apple pie. That the greatest adversary to the love in our hearts that's reaching out for God is not all of the challenges that we face in the world, but it's all of those egoic victories that we celebrate in ourselves. And that the greatest of all the difficulties we have in knowing our oneness with God is not our addiction to any one of the 7 great worldly sins of the world, but it's our addiction to all of the simple, pleasurable things of this world. Because our mind gets so filled with all the small things of this world that we create this incredible bubble of separation because we think, oh, it's so good, God is so good, I'm so filled with goodness, that we get lost in all of that, that we lose sight. And in sort of a metaphysical idolatry, we are separated from God, and it's almost invisible to us. We can't see it, and fasting breaks the bubble. It stops it all for a moment and says, disengage from all of that and think about God. It's hugely powerful. I think there are 3 things about fasting that are important for us as spiritual people. First and foremost is that it will teach us something about ourselves. Fasting will teach us something about God. And fasting will help us to bring our life into balance. And those are all great things. Great things that we all need to know. We're intensely complicated people. We have buried our feelings and emotions under layers of activities. We're the only species of animal that's not only capable of lying, but lying to ourselves. And we are extremely gullible. So how do we know what the truth is? We need to know more about who we are and what we're doing in this world, something about ourselves. Fasting will teach us the power of our will. Now, I want you to understand from the very beginning that I'm going to talk about different kinds of fasting. So if you have some sort of, automatically, I ain't going to do fasting, well, just be open-minded and listen. We talk about it. I'm going to tell you different kinds and ways to fast. But fasting is an exercise of our will. And the question then becomes fundamental is, who is in charge of your body? Who has dominion over your life? Is it you, the being, or is it this? See, fasting gives you an opportunity to exercise dominion over yourself. Just recently, I went through a 24-hour fast of the kind that I'm recommending for people in this congregation. It's a 24-hour fast with water only, and I'll give you some caveats about that later. And actually, it wasn't difficult at all until walking on the streets. I was in Los Angeles there, walking on the street corner. I stopped in front of a bakery. Oh my God. If you know me, you know I love bakeries and bread and everything. So I turned to my friend. I had an opportunity to discover the power of my will. And I said, we have to get across the street right now. But my will could have said, I've been doing this for 6 hours now. I suppose I could have a croissant. Consider it communion or something. So fasting will give us an opportunity to exercise and re-exercise our will and our power of decision. It will exercise a degree of freedom. Because we need to understand that we are not victims of our appetite. So many times our bodies are like these little whiny children. That, I want to eat. Okay, here, have some popcorn. I want to eat some chocolate. Here, have some chocolate. I want to eat, and whatever my body whines for, I'm this incredibly bad parent that just gives it. Yeah, Mark's nodding. So the degree of freedom is to get away from those whiny children and say, kids, you're not eating today at all, so don't bother me. Go outside and play. and have an out-of-body experience for yourself. There's an amazing degree of freedom that comes when you realize the dominion that we have over our own being. And if we don't ever set up an opportunity to demonstrate it, it doesn't happen. And then there's the wisdom of our bodies. Fasting will give us an opportunity to listen to our bodies, beyond the stomach, but to everything else. And people say to me, well, gee, aren't you going to get weak and run out? I said, well, here's the thing, folks. Some of you may know I used to be a registered nurse for a while, so I'm not making this stuff up. I'm telling you now that digestion of food is the most difficult thing our body has to do, biologically. It requires more energy and more effort on every organ's part to digest a meal than anything else we do. This is why after you have a great big meal, you get kind of sleepy sometimes. That's because everybody else is working. Oh, the stomach is working, the intestines, all the blood's going down there, and all this stuff's happening, and your brain's going, I think we should take a nap, and you do. So, the wisdom of your body is that when you don't eat, it'll be a relief. Now, I'm not going to look at anybody in particular, but I do believe that most of us have a reserve amount of stuff that will sustain us through it one day. Maybe. And our body will know what to do. So here's the fascinating side effect, and I know this is true because my friend Danny just did the fast this week, and he was kind of amazed at what happened. He did a fast, and he says, I can't believe it. I had more energy than I thought. Well, yeah. Because your body's not working all that stuff to digest food, all the stuff, trust me, there's usually enough to eat all over everywhere. So the body, it's right there readily available. And so now there's more energy for doing all the other things. And there's a level of an alertness that comes. There's a shift in that. And so your body will respond and will know. But if you don't ever give it that opportunity, if we keep the whiny child fed all the time, then we never get to discover all the other things that are possible. So we get to learn about our bodies. It teaches us things about God. Fasting does. It teaches us that God is the source of our sustenance. And this is hard for people because we're really locked into the Western scientific model that you have to eat, you have to drink, or you die. Right? Well, we do believe that. Most of us. In India, there's a man named Buddha Boy who for 12 years has been sitting under a tree and has not eaten or drinking anything for 12 years. Thousands and millions of people have come to see him. He's been documented on PBS. You can go to YouTube and watch it. I know it's true. He's not the only one. There are many bodhisattvas in India who do not eat. You say, well, how is that possible? Okay, well, let's think about it a minute. If we agree that food basically nourishes our bodies because it's energy, it turns into energy. And if God essentially is energy, as we teach here all the time, don't you think it might be possible that if we were elevated enough consciously as spiritual beings, we could tap into that energy and we would not need then to eat food? We would get it directly from God. There are a whole sects of people in India who spend all day staring at the sun from the moment it comes up until it goes down. And they do not go blind. And they receive their nourishment from that light, which is energy that comes into their bodies. Now, these are amazing beings. It happens. There are Christian mystics who have gone days and months and years without eating. Jesus said at one point to his disciples, I have bread of which you know not of. And he didn't mean I've got a croissant in my pocket. He meant he was connected spiritually to a source that was beyond their understanding. Now, I am not, you may be thinking, God, what kind of a weird church is this? How soon can I get out of here? They're not going to let us eat for 40 years. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting anything that extreme. I am just saying we need to understand the possibility and that we will survive a day. Jesus survived 40 days. Moses did 2 40-day fasts. We can survive a day, is all I'm suggesting. And that day, we will become more aware of how we are connected to an energy that is not food, but is spiritual. But if we never go without the food, we never know. Do you see? If we never go without that lunch, we'll never understand why that connection is important and how real it can be. We will understand a shared communion. Now, when I speak of a fast, I'm not speaking of the kind of fast that's talked about on the cover of Men's Health magazine. That's a diet. There's a big difference between a diet and a fast, because a fast has a spiritual component to it. And when I speak of fasting, Jesus always spoke, and all guru masters will speak of prayer and fasting together. Fasting is in replace of. So instead of buying the food, going to the store and buying the food, we spend that time in some spiritual activity. Instead of preparing the food, we spend that time in some kind of spiritual activity. Instead of eating the food, we spend that time in some kind of a meditation. Instead of washing the dishes, we spend that time in some kind of a spiritual activity. Now, do you see what's happened? Wow, things have really changed. And imagine you do that 3 times a day. Imagine if you did it 3 times in one day. You would then develop a communion with God that you wouldn't have without it. And then as a result of those first 2 things, you will experience amazing peace. The last thing, Charles Fillmore, is the co-founder of Unity, said, in abstinence from worldly things, the mind must be filled with thoughts of God, else there is no spiritual value in fasting. I love the Paramahansa teaching that we've been teaching here so much, where he said very simply, the recipe for enlightenment: read a little, meditate more, and think about God all the time. Instead of food, which we do a lot. I'm in there with you. And it helps to lead a balanced life. It helps to reset the priorities of our life. Whereas we're normally considered. Now, I want to stop and give the caveat here, because I fully recognize there are people in the world who have there are people who are pregnant or nursing. There are people who have diabetes and serious medical issues. If that is you, then before you do any kind of a food fast, you need to check with your doctor, okay? There's that. That's really, really important. If you have serious weight loss issues, you need to check with your doctor before you do a fast. And I also want you to know that there are all kinds of fasts. I'm speaking primarily of a food fast, but if you say, well, I have to eat because I have medication I have to take, you got to get some kind of whatever your reason is, fine. There are other ways to fast that will help shift priorities. This is dangerous territory now. You could fast from complaining for a day, criticizing, being negative. Okay, now take a big breath. You could fast from your cell phone for a day. You could fast from Facebook for a day. You could fast from your computer for a day. You could fast from TV for a day. Oh my gosh. I'm getting serious now, and I realize you're getting nervous, but please understand that, see, I told you this was a cult. Now they want my phones. No, I'm just talking about a day. Because what happens is it'll reorder priorities in life. It'll make things that weren't important have an opportunity to be important, because we've filled up our lives with so much stuff. We are so connected all the time. I mean, I laughed hysterically. I came out of the office the other day. We were all going over here to have some coffee or something next door, and the 3 of us are all standing around waiting for somebody, and everybody whips out their phone. They're all like this. And we all have an opportunity to connect with each other. But we're like this. I truly would tell you and think the world would be a whole lot better place if God had a Facebook page. Because then people would connect. Oh, God's on Facebook. I've been a friend of God. I've confirmed God's my friend. And we would be checking frequently. A lot more frequently than we do probably now. And we might even get texts from God, by the way. Just don't you know I love you today? Oh, God loves me. Isn't that cool? How great would that be? But that's not what's happening. So we have to take the bull by the horns ourselves and find that connection inside. We need to allow our bodies to cleanse. Giving all these organs and all this stuff a day off is like a really wonderful thing. Hey, guys, have not a coffee break. Have a hot water and lemon juice break today, because we're not going to eat. We're just going to be today. And then it will increase yourself. You get to be the domineering, controlling force in your life. You get to have that. And that puts the priority in the right place. We're not driven by our appetites. We're not driven by these impulses and urges. We are driven by our own decision to connect with God and to be spiritual beings. I mean, that's amazing. So understand that fasting is abstaining from anything that hinders our conscious connection with God. And you do it for a day. It could be phones, computers, food. It could be even one particular kind of food. You say, well, I can't give up this. I have to have that. Fine. Try something else for a day. Here's how to do it. Number one, set an intention and commit to the kind of fast you want to do. There are all kinds. I am suggesting if you're healthy and you're willing and you're able to experiment with yourself to do a 24-hour water-only fast. Pick a day and just do it. Now, this is not something that you post on Facebook and say, oh, I'm fasting today for 24 hours. This is just something private thing between you and God. You just do it. Okay? If you don't want to do that, there are juice fasts, there are vegetable fasts, there are all kinds of food, different kinds. You can just pick one. It doesn't make any difference. Because it's the point of making that change and taking control over your life. Number two, prepare yourself spiritually. Remember, the power of a fast is in the spiritual connection that's a result of that fast. So you don't want to get into a fast and say, well, I can't fix lunch. So I don't know what to do. No, I don't have any time. I wonder what's on TV. Maybe I should just watch those old reruns of Roseanne or something. No? That's pretty spiritual. So what you do is, before you go into the fast, collect the things that you want, the little books you want to read, the daily words, the meditation books, or make a list of the websites you want to visit, the ones with all the pretty pictures and the affirmations that come up. Whatever it is for you that is spiritual guidance, or the Bhagavad Gita, or the Bible, or any of the books that you want to that inspire you, plan out how this spiritual thing is going to do. So I'm going to take 10 minutes, I'm going to meditate, and then I'm going to read this. Take charge of what this spiritual experience is going to be. Prepare yourself. 3, listen to your body. If you've been fasting from the morning and long about noon, your knees start to shake and things start to get a little gray, eat something. Listen to your body. If your body says, that's it, I can't take anymore, then say, okay, good. Congratulate yourself on how much you did. Make an agreement with your body. Okay, good. You did 6 hours today. Good for you. Next week, we're going to try 7. And then next week, we'll try maybe 8. But celebrate yourself. Celebrate whatever victory you make in this power over your own life. Listen to your bodies. And then the last one, end the fast gradually. You do not end a fast by having a celebratory banquet at Perry Boy Smorgy. This is not the thing to do. Your body has been, When you come out of it, coming out of a fast is as sacred as going into it. Okay? In the Muslim culture, I understand that Ramadan fast at the end of every day is ended by eating a fig because it's sweet. And it's natural, and it's a reminder of the sweetness and the goodness of God providing food. A simple thing. It's a small thing. So when you end the fast, end small, simple, okay? And then build up. I have some affirmations for you that these we posted on our website in case you forget. If you decide to participate in a fast, you can look at these and see if they inspire you. Today, I surrender my body into the consciousness of God. That's how we begin the fast. Today, I am surrendering my body into the consciousness of God. It's a conscious spiritual decision for one day. Can you join me? Let's speak this together. Today, I surrender my body into the consciousness of God. Boy, if you start your day like that, you are going to have a day you're not going to forget. Number 2, today I am free from anything that separates me from my awareness of God. Today I am free from anything that separates me from my awareness of God. Because that's what this is all about, is bringing God into your awareness. Number 3 is a result of number 1 and number 2. Number 1 and number 2 give you love and peace. So you would say, today I am filled with love and peace. Together, today I am filled with love and peace. The footsteps of the masters are important for us because they are masters. And if we follow those things, we can make that journey that they made into enlightenment, into oneness with God, into peace and love. And these spiritual practices are powerful. So my encouragement for you is to consider doing that. Try it. Love yourself into something that you've never done before, maybe, and see what gifts await you. Will you close your eyes with me for just a moment, please? I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath. The friend that we sang about is with you right now. And you may not have agreed with anything I've said. You may not have agreed with what I'm asking you to do, and you don't have to. I ask you only to listen to that voice of God that is inside you, the friend that says, I love you. The friend that's inside of you that says, you know, maybe this is a good idea because I've been missing my time with you. The friend that says, I love you and I want to be with you more. And I want you to want to be with me. If you can find that place where you love God and you want God, I invite you in these quiet moments to live there. Live there right now as each one of us connects with God in this sacred and holy silence.